Jay kissed the bartender on a $40 dare, and before he could even pull back and laugh about it, the floor seemed to drop out from under him. It was the taste that did it. Cold water and burnt orange, sharp and clean, going straight down into him, and his knees went loose under him, and the laughter from his friends behind him cut off all at once like someone had pulled a plug. The whole bar had gone quiet. Jay got maybe an inch of space back, and that was all he got, because the bartender had gone rigid, one hand flat on the bar, the color draining out of his face, and a scent was coming off him that had not been there a second before, thick and bright and pulling at the base of Jay's skull, less like wanting something and more like falling toward it. "What did you do?" the bartender said. He was not really asking. His fingers came up to his own mouth, where Jay's had just been, and his breathing had gone shallow and fast, and he looked at Jay like Jay had just handed him a death sentence. It was a bet. Jay said, It was a joke, my friends. I didn't." "You bonded me." The bartender's voice cracked on it. "Do you understand what you just did? You bonded me. To you." Jay laughed, because that was not possible. Everyone knew you could not bond from a kiss. The bartender did not laugh. He stood there with one hand on his own mouth and his eyes filling, and the scent kept climbing. And that was the moment Jay started to understand that the easiest $40 he had ever made was going to cost him the rest of his life. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. I read every single one. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's story. Jay was 22. He had a degree in communications that he had picked because it sounded like it could turn into anything. And the problem with a thing that could turn into anything was that it never quite turned into one thing. So it sat on a shelf in his head doing nothing. Like the degree itself sat in a drawer somewhere still in its cardboard tube. He lived in the back bedroom of a rental near the water that he shared with Mason, and whichever of Mason's friends needed a couch that month. He slept until noon. He told his mother on the phone every Sunday that he was sending out applications. And he was, technically, sending out some applications. But mostly, he was sending out a feeling that the applications would sort themselves out if he just gave them enough time. His mother had stopped believing the Sunday calls a while ago. Jay could hear it now. The small pause before she said, "That sounds good, honey." The pause where she used to say something more. She had paid his half of the rent twice that fall and waved him off both times when he said he would pay her back. He told himself he would pay her back. He told himself a lot of things in those days, in the easy way of someone who has never once had to find out whether the things he told himself were true. The truth was that Jay had never had to be anything. He was good-looking and he knew it, and he had coasted on it since he was 15, like some people coast on money. Teachers had liked him. Girls had liked him. And then, when he figured that part out about himself, everyone had liked him. He had a way of walking into a room like it had been waiting for him. He had never had a job he could not quit, a friend he could not flake on, a problem that did not eventually get bored and go solve itself. Nothing had cost him anything. So nothing had taught him anything. That kind of thing does not show until something finally costs you, and nothing had, not yet. Mason was the one who found low tide. Mason found everything first and held it over you a little, and that was just Mason, and Jay had known him since they were boys and had long since stopped minding. It was a narrow brick place down near the docks, the kind of spot that had been there long enough to stop trying to be anything, with mismatched stools and a good jukebox and prices that suited 4 guys who were not going anywhere fast. They had been coming for a couple of months. It was where they went. Jay did not know that the bartender there had a 4-year-old asleep across town. He did not know the man worked nights, because nights were the only hours he could cover without losing the wages to daycare. He did not know any of it. Jay had never once in his life had to wonder what the quiet person across a room was carrying. People were scenery to him, pleasant or boring, and he had no practice at being anything else. The night it happened started like every night that year had started, with 4 guys who had nothing to do and a little money to do it with. It was cold out, the wet cold that came up off the sound that time of year, diesel and salt and rain on the brick, and inside low tide was warm and loud and close, the jukebox going. The 4 of them crammed into a booth in the back with a couple of pitchers between them. Jay was half listening to Mason tell a story he had heard before. He was watching the bar. "You're staring," Mason said. "I'm not staring." "You've been staring at the bartender for 20 minutes. Jay had been a little. The bartender was new, or knew enough that Jay had not seen him before the last few weeks, and he was the kind of quiet that made you look twice. He worked the whole bar by himself with this economy of motion, no wasted steps, eyes down, a small unsmiling nod when he set a drink in front of you and a smaller one when you tipped, dark hair pushed back off his face, sleeves rolled, a dish towel hooked through his apron string. He was not loud, and he was not friendly, and he did not flirt. And in a place like Low Tide, where everyone had a little too much to say, the quiet around him stood out. "He's not anybody's type," said Tomas, the fourth of them and the only one with a real job, which he reminded the table of often. "He doesn't even look up." "That's the type," Mason said, grinning, leaning back. "That's exactly the type, the quiet ones. He's an Omega, too." Mason could not actually tell. He was an Alpha, and so was Jay, and neither of them could smell a thing off the bartender, who was either suppressed or just naturally faint, a presence so low you could stand next to it and catch nothing. But Mason liked to be the one who knew things, and the table let him, because the alternative was an argument, and the beer was cold. And that was how it went, the bet sliding out of nothing, escalating while the round went down, each of them topping the last to a chorus of low laughter. Tomas said the bartender wouldn't smile all night. Mason said he could get a number out of him, and somewhere in there, with the easy cruelty of young men who have never once been on the receiving end of anything, the bet landed on Jay, because Jay was the good-looking one and everybody at the table knew it, including Jay. $20, Mason said. "You can't kiss him." "That's stupid." 40. "You can't just kiss a guy who's working. He won't even care. He doesn't care about anything. Look at him." Mason was already pulling bills out of his pocket, the showman, laying them on the sticky table like a man closing a deal. $40. You walk up, you kiss him, you walk back. He'll be so surprised he won't even say anything. Easiest money you ever made. Jay should have said no. He knew that even at the time, somewhere underneath the beer and the warm, stupid glow of being 22 and out with his friends on a Friday night, with nothing he had to do tomorrow, he knew the bartender had done nothing to anybody. He knew the right answer was to laugh it off and order another round and let Mason keep his $40. But there is a particular weakness in a certain kind of young man, the weakness of not wanting to be the one who flinched, and Jay had it like he had his height and his easy smile, a thing he was born with and never worked for. And so when Mason said easiest money you ever made, what Jay heard underneath it was the dare to be someone who would not. He stood up. The guys started laughing before he had taken a step. He walked over to the bar with his hands in his pockets, doing the thing he was good at. The loose walk, the half smile, the easy ownership of a room he was crossing. The bartender did not look up. W's. He was wiping down the well, rinsing a shaker, his back half turned, and Jay leaned an elbow on the bar and said something. He could not remember after what it was, some opener. "Hey, slow night." Something with no weight to it, and the bartender glanced up with a flat, patient look that said he had heard every version of every line 1,000 times and was waiting for Jay to finish so he could go back to work. That look should have stopped him. It was a person's whole exhaustion in one glance, the look of someone who got approached and grabbed at and talked over, and any version of Jay that had grown up even a little would have read it and backed off. 22-year-old Jay read it as a challenge. He grinned. He leaned in. He thought, this is going to be so easy, and he closed the last of the space between them and kissed him, square on the mouth, an ordinary kiss. No idea that this particular mouth belonged to the one Omega in 1,000 it was not safe to kiss, and that was the moment the floor came loose. He had no name for what happened. He learned the names. Later. There was only the taste, cold water and burnt orange peel, and a pull so total it bent him forward, and the laughter dying behind him, and the bartender going stone, still, under his mouth. Then the bartender said something low, just for Jay, 2 words that did not make sense yet, and his eyes were wet when he said them. The bartender's name was Daniel. Jay did not know that yet. He would not know it for almost an hour, because the next thing that happened was that Daniel set the bottle down with a care that did not match anything else about the moment, lifted the hinged section of the bar, walked through it, and kept walking, out the side door into the alley, and Jay, against every instinct that told him to go back to the booth and his beer and his friends and pretend none of this had happened, followed him. The alley was cold and wet and stank of the dumpster and the salt off the water. Daniel was standing with both hands braced on the brick wall, his head down, his back rising and falling too fast. "Hey," Jay said. "Hey, I'm sorry. My friends bet me. It was a stupid. Are you okay?" "Don't." Daniel did not turn around. His voice had gone rough. "Do not come closer. Stay where you are." Jay stayed. He had never in his life done what he was told this fast. "You're an alpha," Daniel said. It came out flat, accusing, certain. "Yeah. Of course you are." A sound came out of him that might have been a laugh if it had been less awful. "Of course you are. You walk up to a stranger and you kiss him on a dare, because you are an alpha, and the whole world is yours to touch." The words went in like a knife, because they were true, and Jay had never had to feel them true before. I didn't know that's what. I wasn't trying to." "I know you weren't trying to." Daniel turned around then. In the bad light of the alley, his face was wrong, flushed across the cheekbones, a sheen on his forehead, his eyes too bright. He was holding himself very upright with what was clearly an enormous effort. "That is the part you are not going to understand. You weren't trying to do anything. You never are. That's the whole problem with people like you. What's happening to you? You're sick. Do you need?" "I'm not sick." Daniel pressed the back of his wrist to his mouth and shut his eyes. "I'm going into heat. Early. Days early. It doesn't matter. Why? And you kissed me in the first hour of it. Most omegas, you could kiss them all night. Nothing happens. I'm not most omegas. I run high. Always have." His breath was coming wrong. "A kiss from an alpha, when I'm like, this is the one thing you don't do, and you did it, and now." He stopped. His throat moved. "Now we've got a problem that doesn't go away." Jay did not understand. He understood that something enormous had happened, and that he had caused it, and that the man in front of him was frightened in a way that had nothing to do with being kissed in a bar. But the shape of the thing was past him. He was 22. He knew about heats like he knew about taxes, as a fact that applied to other people. "What problem?" he said. "I'll fix it. Tell me how to fix it." And Daniel looked at him for a long moment, and what was on his face was not anger anymore, just a tiredness that went all the way down. And he said, "You can't. There's no fixing it. That's what bonding is. You don't fix it, you just live with it." The word bonding landed in Jay's chest and sat there like a swallowed stone. He wanted to say that was not possible. Everyone had heard you could not bond from a kiss, that it took a claiming bite, heat, intention, 100 things that had not happened in that bar. He opened his mouth to say it. Then the wind moved and brought Daniel's scent across the space between them. Cold water and burnt orange gone deeper now, and Jay felt his own scent come up to meet it before he could stop it. Cold rope and green walnut, and something underneath like a struck match. The two of them mixed in the air and turned into something that was neither, clean and wide and impossible to place. His head was still saying no. His body already knew. He had read about it once. The thing nobody believed in. The sensitive omega, the 1 in 1,000, the one whose chemistry ran so high that the old warnings about a single taste were not warnings at all but plain biology. He had read it, like you read about shark attacks. A thing that did not happen to you. It happened, Daniel said, watching his face. Whatever you're telling yourself in there, it happened. I can feel you. Right now. I can feel that you're scared. His mouth twisted. I can feel that you wish you were back at your table. I don't, Jay said, and was surprised to find he meant it. You will. Daniel pushed off the wall. He swayed and caught himself on the dumpster and waved Jay back when Jay started forward. Go home. Whatever this is, we deal with it when I can think. Not now. Not in the next week. Go home and tell your friends you won your bet. He went back inside through the side door and the door shut, and Jay stood alone in the cold, with the taste of cold water and burnt orange still in his mouth and a scent in his head that he understood now, going to be free of. And from inside the bar, he could hear, faint and stupid and far away, his friends still laughing. Daniel did not remember walking home. That was the part that scared him most. Afterward, more than the bar, more than the kiss, he remembered the alley. He remembered telling the alpha to go home. He remembered Carol coming out of the back with one look at his face and pulling the towel out of his apron and saying, "Go, just go, I'll close." And pressing a glass of water into his hand and her own cardigan around his shoulders. And then there was a gap, a smear of cold streetlight and his own fast breathing. And then he was on his own stairwell with his keys in his hand not fitting the lock because his hand would not hold still. Mrs. Okafor opened her door across the landing before he got his own open. She was 70, and she did not sleep, and she had watched Lily 100 evenings when the regular sitter could not, and she took one look at Daniel, and her face changed. "Oh, child," she said. "Oh, no. How far in are you?" "It's early," Daniel managed. "It came early. I'm sorry. Is she?" "She's asleep. She's been asleep since 8. She is fine. She is fine. Look at me. She is fine. Mrs." Okafor had a hand on his arm, steering him. "You are not fine. You are burning up. When did you last eat? Do not lie to me." "I have to," Daniel said, and could not finish it, because the sentence was, "I have to take care of her. I have to be up at 6. I have to make her breakfast. I have to be the one." And there was no end of that sentence that did not collapse under the fact that he could barely stand. "You have to lie down," Mrs. Okafor said. "That is the only thing you have to do tonight. I will keep her till morning. I will get her up. I will give her the cereal with the blue box. I will walk her down to the daycare myself. You are going to lie in that bed, and you are going to ride this out, and we will deal with the rest of your life when the fever breaks." And Daniel, who had not let anyone take anything off his plate in 4 years, who had built his entire self out of the iron refusal to ever again be someone's burden, was too far gone to fight her, and that was its own kind of horror. The ease with which the wall came down once his body decided for him. He got the door open. He got inside. The apartment was small and clean and smelled like crayons and the cheap lavender thing he plugged into the wall, and there was a drawing taped to the fridge, a 4-year-old's idea of a whale, blue scribble in a spout going up like a firework. And looking at it steadied him for 1 second before the next wave came up his spine. He made it to the couch. He did not make it to the bed. He lay there in the dark with his coat still on, and his body running hot and aching and wrong. And for the first time in a long time, he was not thinking about rent or shifts or daycare waitlists or whether the car would pass inspection. He was thinking about a stranger's scent, cold rope, green walnut, that low struck match note underneath. It would not leave, and worst of all, it was not unpleasant. His body had decided it was the safest smell in the world, and his body was an idiot and a traitor, and he hated it, because a bond was not a feeling, and a feeling you could get over. A bond was a fact written into the body, and one made by accident with a stranger who kissed you on a dare was not a romance. It was a sentence. It meant that this beautiful, careless boy, who probably could not name 3 things he was responsible for, was now stitched into Daniel's life, whether either of them wanted it, and Daniel had spent 4 years making sure the only person stitched into his life was one too small to take care of herself, and he had been so careful. And one drunk alpha had undone all of it between one breath and the next. He pressed his face into the couch cushion, and he did not cry, because crying was a luxury for people who would not have to be up at 6, and he rode the fever down into a thin and broken sleep, and in it, against everything he wanted, he dreamed of open water. Jay did not sleep at all. He lay in the back bedroom of the rental with the streetlight coming through the bad blinds in stripes, and he stared at the ceiling, and he could not get warm, and he could not get cool, and there was a wrongness in him, low and constant, like a phone buzzing in another room that he could not find and could not silence. Around 2 in the morning, he got up and stood in the kitchen drinking water straight from the tap, and he caught himself, mid-swallow, with his face turned toward the window, toward the dark, toward the part of the city where he understood without being able to say how he understood it. The bartender was. Some compass in his chest had swung and stuck. It pointed, and it pulled, and it would not stop. Mason found him there in the morning, gray-faced at the kitchen table, and laughed, because Mason laughed first and thought second. "Look at this," Mason said. "Rough night? You were a legend, man. You should have seen your face." Walked up like a champ, and then ran out the door after him like the building was on fire. He clapped Jay on the shoulder. "Did you get it? You get a number? Tomas owes me either way. The man hasn't smiled since the Clinton administration." "Don't," Jay said. "Don't. What?" "Don't talk about him like that." Mason stopped, his hand still on Jay's shoulder, and looked at him like you look at a friend who has said something in a voice you have never heard before. "Okay," he said slowly. "Weird. It was a kiss, dude. You won $40. Here." He actually had the $40, 2 20s, folded, and he set them on the table next to Jay's hand, and the sight of them, the cash, the proof that a person could be reduced to a transaction at a sticky table, made something turn over in Jay's stomach. "I have to go back there," Jay said. "Back where?" "The bar. I have to find him. I have to." And Jay stopped, because what came next was so far outside anything he had ever said or felt or wanted that he did not have a sentence for it. "I have to find him because I think I bonded him. I have to find him because there is a string tied to the middle of me, and the other end is tied to him, and it hurts. I have to find him because I did something I cannot undo, and the not fixing of it is going to eat me alive. I have to apologize," is what he said, which was true and was nowhere near the whole of it. Mason picked his $40 back up off the table, slowly, like it had become something he did not want to be holding, and for the first time in their whole long friendship, he did not have a joke ready. "You're being serious right now," he said. "Yeah, over a bar kiss." "It wasn't," Jay said, and could not explain, and that was the first crack, the very first one. The hairline split between the life Jay had been living and the one that had grabbed him by the collar in a dockside bar, and neither he nor Mason knew yet how wide it was going to open. He went back that afternoon. Low tide did not open until 4, but he stood across the street in the cold with his hands jammed in his pockets, and he waited, and the pull in his chest got stronger as the hours went, which told him, before he saw anything, that he was in the right place, and a little after 3, a small figure came down the block toward the bar, holding the hand of a much smaller figure, a child, a little girl in a yellow raincoat, with the hood up, swinging the held hand and talking, and the figure was the bartender, and Jay's whole understanding of the situation rearranged itself in the space of a single held breath. The bartender was a father. Jay watched him crouch down on the wet sidewalk, level with the kid, and tug the yellow hood straighter, and say something that made the little girl laugh, a real laugh, head back. And the bartender's face when she laughed was a different face entirely from the flat-closed thing Jay had seen across the bar, open and tired and fierce with love. And Jay stood frozen across the street with the cold going through his thin jacket and the awful new size of what he had done settling over him, like water closing over a head. He had bonded a stranger on a dare. The stranger had a child. The stranger had a whole entire life, a real one, with a kid in a raincoat and a hand to hold and a face he saved for, and Jay had walked into the middle of it drunk on a Friday for $40, and there was no walking back out. The bartender straightened up. He had felt it, Jay realized. The bond. He had felt Jay there before he saw him, the same compass, the same pull, and his head came up and turned, and his eyes found Jay across the street, with an accuracy that had nothing to do with sight, and his face closed like a door. He picked the little girl up onto his hip, fast, turning his body so that he was between her and the street, between her and Jay, and even at that distance, even across 2 lanes of wet road. Jay could read the whole of it in how he held her. Not this one. You do not get near this one. Whatever you broke last night, you do not get to break this. Jay did not cross the street. That was the first grown thing he did, and he did not even know it was grown. He only knew that the look on the man's face had pinned him where he stood. He watched them go inside. The door shut. He went home, and he came back the next day, and the day after that, and he did not cross the street any of those days either, just stood far enough back that the man could see him keeping his distance, then went home. He could not have told you what he thought it would accomplish. He only knew the pull eased when he was close and got worse when he was far, and that standing across a street like an idiot was the only move available to a person who had broken something he was not allowed to touch. On the 4th day, Carol came out instead, somewhere in her 40s and built like she could move a keg without help, and she walked straight up to him with the unhurried walk of a woman who had thrown people out of bars for a living. "You're the one. From Friday." It was not a question. "You've been out here days." "I want to make it right," Jay said. "You can't." She said it the same flat way Daniel had said it in the alley, and Jay was beginning to understand this was just the truth, and not anyone being cruel. "There's a bond. It's done. And that man in there has a 4-year-old and a kid to raise alone, and a body that's been running a fever because of you. What he needs is for the cause of all that to stop haunting his sidewalk." Jay made himself take it. "Then tell me what he needs, and I'll do that instead. I'm not trying to make it about me. Tell me the thing that helps, and you'll never see me out here again." Carol's eyebrows went up a fraction. It was not the answer she had been braced for. "Huh," she said. "His name's Daniel. Since you've ruined his week, you might as well know it." "The kid is Lily, and you do not so much as look at her. You do not wave. You do not learn one thing more than her name. You're a stranger, and you stay a stranger until he says otherwise, which will be never. But until then." She turned for the bar. "Go home, Jay." He went home. But knowing the name changed something. And that night, Jay did the first real thinking he had done in months. None of it about himself. A fever that had lasted days. A night shift worked through it. A yellow raincoat and a face saved for one person. The feeling arrived fully formed. I am part of this now, whether he wants me or not. And the only decent version of being part of it is to become the kind of person who does not make it worse. He had no idea how to be that person. He was 22 and had never been responsible for anything heavier than rent, which his mother still sometimes quietly covered. But not knowing how did not feel like an excuse anymore. It just felt like a list of things he had to figure out. The fever broke days later, and Daniel woke clear-headed for the first time in almost a week, and the clarity was worse than the fever, because the fever at least gave him something to do, which was survive it, and the clarity gave him nothing to do but look the whole disaster in the face. He was bonded to a stranger, to a child, practically, a boy whose $40 dare had reached into Daniel's chest and tied a knot no distance was going to undo. He could feel it, low and constant, under everything else. When Jay was close, the knot loosened. When Jay was far, it pulled. He had spent the week trying to ignore it, and you cannot ignore it, and the trying wore him down. Carol told him about the sidewalk. 4 days, she said, every day, far enough back to be polite about it. And then the conversation, and the boy's answer when she'd told him there was no making it right. "Tell me what he needs and I'll do that instead." "Don't," Daniel said. "I'm not doing anything. I'm telling you what happened." "You're telling me he's sweet, so I'll feel something." "I'm telling you he stood in the cold for 4 days and then asked me what would actually help instead of what would make him feel better." Carol shrugged, wiping down the bar between them. "I've thrown a lot of alphas out of this room, Daniel. 20 years of it. I know the difference between a kid who's sorry he got caught and a kid who's scared of what he did. That boy is scared of what he did. That's not nothing. That's not everything either. But it's not nothing. Daniel did not want it to be anything. That was the truth he turned over on the walk home that night, the cold coming up off the water. his body finally his own again. He did not want the boy to be sweet. He did not want the boy to be scared in the right direction. He wanted the boy to be exactly what the situation said he was, a careless alpha who took what he wanted because the world had always let him. Because that version was simple, and Daniel knew how to hold that version at arm's length forever. A boy who stood in the cold and asked the right question was not simple. A boy like that was a crack in the wall. And Daniel had built the wall on purpose, brick by brick. Over 4 years, starting the day Lily's other father had looked at the 2 pink lines and at Daniel and said the words Daniel still heard, sometimes in the bad part of the night, "I'm not ready for this." Like readiness was a thing that arrived in the mail and walked out and never once stood in any cold for anything. That was the wall. Never again would Daniel arrange his life around someone else's readiness. Never again would he let Lily's stability hang on whether some man woke up one morning and decided he was up for it. He had made that vow over a sleeping infant, and he had kept it through every hard year since, and he was not going to break it now for a pair of frightened eyes and a good question. So when Jay was on the sidewalk the next afternoon, Daniel walked straight across the street to him for the first time, and Jay went still and straightened up like a soldier, and Daniel said, without any preamble, "We're going to talk once. Tonight. After close. Carol stays in the room. You do not come near here again after that unless I say so. Do you understand?" "Yes," Jay said. "Say it back, so I know you heard it. One time, tonight, after close, Carol stays, and I don't come back unless you say." Jay's voice was careful, like he was holding something fragile in both hands. "I heard it." Daniel had not expected that either, the repeating it back, and he hated that he had not expected it. Hated that the boy kept doing small, correct things that did not fit the story Daniel needed him to be in. They talked at midnight at a corner table, while Carol stacked chairs and pretended not to listen, and listened to every word. Up close and sober, and not in the grip of anything, Daniel could see him properly for the first time, and that was almost worse, because the boy was young in a way that hurt to look at. Young like Daniel had been once, before the world took it out of him. With that smooth, unmarked face of someone nothing bad had happened to yet, he kept his hands flat on the table where Daniel could see them. He had clearly been told to do that, or had figured out on his own that an omega across a table from an alpha who had grabbed him wanted to see the hands. And either way, it was the right thing, and Daniel was getting very tired of the boy doing the right thing. "I'm not going to perform forgiveness for you," Daniel said. "If that's what tonight is, if you came to get told, it's okay." "It's not why I came." "Then why?" Jay was quiet for a second, looking at his own hands. "Because I keep starting sentences in my head with the word sorry," he said, "and every one of them is about me. Sorry I feel bad. Sorry I can't fix it. Sorry I ruined my own week thinking about it. And I figured if I came here and said any of those out loud, you'd know exactly what they were. You'd know they were all about me, and you'd be right to throw me out." He looked up. "So I'm not going to say sorry. I'm going to ask you what the actual situation is. Because I don't understand what I did. I know it's bad. I can feel that it's bad. But I don't understand the mechanics of it, and I'd rather understand it than keep apologizing for the parts I imagine." And Daniel, despite himself, despite 4 years of wall, told him. He told him what a bond actually was, not the romance version. Two people's bodies tied together so they read each other. The pull when you are apart, the ease when you are close. He told him it did not break. He told him about the rare thing, the omega whose chemistry ran so high that the old warning about a single kiss was not a warning but a fact, and how he had spent his whole life careful about it, careful with everyone, and how all that care had come apart in 1 second because of someone who never knew the danger was there. Jay took it. He did not look away from any of it. When Daniel got to Lily, to the one line he would not cross, Jay nodded before he finished, like it was obvious. "She doesn't know I exist," Jay said. "She's not going to know I exist. Yeah, obviously." "It's not obvious," Daniel said. "That's the thing you don't get. None of this is obvious. Half the alphas I've known would already be talking about their rights. The bond's mutual. It ties you to me. and there are people who'd be sitting where you're sitting telling me what they're owed. I'm not owed anything. Jay said it fast and certain, and then, slower, like he was working it out as he said it. You didn't agree to this. I did it to you. You don't owe me access to your life because my body got attached to yours in a bar. That doesn't make sense. That's like breaking someone's window and then asking to live in the house. Carol across the room set a chair down a little harder than she needed to, which was the sound of a woman who had heard something she approved of and did not want anyone to know it. Daniel sat back. He was thrown, and he did not like being thrown, and the boy kept doing it. Then what do you want? He said. If you don't want access, and you don't want forgiveness, and you don't want me to tell you, it's fine. What is it you're standing on my sidewalk for? Jay thought about it. He actually thought Daniel could see him thinking, and the answer when it came was not smooth and was not rehearsed and was the truest thing either of them had said all night. I think I just don't want to be the guy who did this, Jay said, and I can't undo being the guy who did this, so I don't know. I want to be useful to you, however small, for as long as this goes, which is forever, I guess. So, he stopped, started again. Not to make it right. You said there's no making it right. I get that. Just to put something on the other side. Even if it doesn't even out. He shrugged, and for 1 second the careless boy was visible underneath. The boy who shrugged at everything, except the shrug did not match the words. That's it. I don't have a better answer than that. Daniel looked at him for a long time. The bar was quiet. Carol had run out of chairs to stack and was just standing at the far end with a rag, not even pretending anymore. No. Daniel said finally, You don't come near Lily. You don't come near the apartment. But. He hated himself a little for the but. You can be in the room. Here. When I'm working, you want to put something on the scale, you can do the thing nobody ever does, which is just be steady and not need anything for it. No talking about the bond. No telling me how you feel. You show up, you have a drink like a normal customer, you go home, and you don't make me manage your guilt on top of everything else. That's the offer. That's the whole offer. Take it or leave it. I'll take it, Jay said. You don't even know what you're taking. I know it's more than I'd get if I'd done what most people would do, Jay said. So I'm taking it. That was how it started. The strange, slow shape of the next stretch of weeks. A boy on a bar stool every shift, nursing one drink, tipping too much, talking to Daniel only when Daniel talked first. He learned the regulars' names before Daniel told him any of them. He started bussing his own glasses, then the glasses near him, and one slow night he was behind the bar drying racks because the dishwasher had quit and Carol had a bad knee. And Daniel turned around and there he was with a towel and a rack of pints like he had always been there. And Daniel opened his mouth to send him back to his side of the bar and did not. And that was a brick. And they both felt it go. The bond settled as the weeks went. Not into love. Daniel would have known love and fought it. It settled into something quieter and more dangerous. The simple animal fact of the other one's nearness becoming the condition his body read as normal. When Jay was in the room, Daniel's shoulders came down. When Jay left it close, Daniel felt the small subtraction of it on the walk home. He filed each, noticing under things to be careful about, and the file got thick, and he kept telling himself the wall was holding. The night it stopped holding was a night the sitter fell through. It was a preheat night, the early edge of the next cycle creeping up ahead of the calendar like his body liked to do, that low, restless fever warmth starting under his skin by afternoon. And he had planned around days he did not have. And then Mrs. Okafor's daughter went into labor 3 states away, and Mrs. Okafor was on a plane by dinner, and the regular sitter had a final, and Carol was already covering the bar, so Daniel could go home early. And Daniel stood in the back of low tide with his phone in his hand and his body turning up its own temperature, and a 4-year-old who needed picking up from daycare soon, and no one on earth to do it. He did not decide to call Jay. His thumb decided. He watched it happen like he had watched himself forget the walk home that first night. His own body making a choice his pride would never have signed off on. And then the phone was ringing, and Jay was answering on the first ring like he had been holding it. And Daniel heard his own voice say the thing he had sworn he would never say to this boy. The thing that broke the one rule he had set in stone on night one. "I need help with Lily." Jay was at the door in almost no time, which meant he had run, and he was holding a paper bag from the corner store. And when Daniel opened the door, the boy stood there, breathing hard with the bag, held up like an offering, and said, "I didn't know what you eat when it's like this, so I got crackers and the orange drink and soup, and I can leave the second you tell me to. I'm not coming in unless you say." "Lily's at daycare," Daniel said. His voice was not steady. He hated that it was not steady. "I have to get her." "I can't drive like this." "I'll drive." "You're not putting my kid in a car." "Then tell me what to do," Jay said. And there it was again. The question that undid him every time. The question that was not about Jay at all. "You're the one who knows. I'll do exactly what you say and nothing you don't." So Daniel told him. Jay called the daycare and put Daniel on the phone to authorize it. And then Jay walked the few blocks to pick Lily up, while Daniel sat on his own front step in the cold, because the cold was the only thing that helped, and he watched the corner the whole time with his heart going hard, because he had just handed the single most precious thing in his life to a boy he had known for a matter of weeks, a boy who had kissed him on a bet, and if that was not proof that his body had stopped listening to his judgment, then nothing was. They came around the corner together. Jay had Lily by the hand, walking slow, matching her steps, and he was listening to her, with his head tipped down and an expression of total concentration. Like whatever she was telling him about her day was the most important briefing he had ever received. Lily was talking with both hands. When she saw Daniel on the step, she let go of Jay and ran, and Daniel caught her even half sick, because catching her was older than any fever, and over the top of her head he looked at Jay, who had stopped at the bottom of the steps, keeping his distance, waiting to be told where the line was. "She told me about the whale," Jay said. "On the fridge. She said it's a blue whale because those are the biggest, and she only draws the biggest animals." "That's her rule," Daniel said. "It's a good rule." Daniel got them both inside. The next part, he would remember in pieces, the fever pulling the edges off everything. Jay did not come past the kitchen. He set the soup on the counter, and he kept Lily occupied at the little table with the crayons, while Daniel got himself together enough to do bedtime. And when Daniel carried her down the hall, she waved at Jay over his shoulder, and Jay waved back, careful, like a man being trusted with something breakable, which he was. Daniel did bedtime. He always did bedtime, fever or no fever, because that was the deal he had made with himself, that the hard parts of his body were his problem and never hers. And he read the short book, and he sang the small song, and he sat on the floor by her bed until her breathing went deep and even. And the whole time his body was a banked fire, and his head was full of cold rope and green walnut, and the low struck match note underneath. And the worst part, the part he could not forgive, was that it helped. Knowing Jay was in the next room helped. The fever was easier to ride with the boy nearby. His biology had decided this was its person, and Daniel lay on the floor of his daughter's room and stared at the ceiling and thought, with the clarity that fever sometimes gives, "I am in so much trouble." When he came back out, Jay had cleaned the kitchen. Not performed cleaning it, cleaned it. The crayons were back in the box. The soup was in a pot on low. The drawing of the whale had been straightened on the fridge. Jay was standing by the door with his coat already on, ready to go the second he was told to. The coat already on, not assuming, leaving room to be sent away. That was the thing that got to Daniel, more than the soup or the bedtime or any of it. "You can stay till the fever turns," Daniel heard himself say. "On the couch. You don't come down the hall. If she wakes up and finds a stranger in the house, I will end you. Do you understand me?" "On the couch," Jay said. "Not down the hall. I understand. Take your coat off then. You look like a salesman." The boy took his coat off. It was a long night, and Daniel got through it like he got through all of them, only this time he was not alone in the apartment. At some point, he ended up on the floor by the couch, his back against it, too restless to lie down. And Jay was on the couch above him, not sleeping either, and for a long time neither of them said anything. The streetlight came through the blinds and bars. The radiator ticked. In the dark, Daniel reached up over the edge of the couch, and Jay's hand was already there, and their fingers fit together, and that was all. Two people holding hands in the dark while a fever burned down. There was nothing to say. The scent in the small apartment had stopped being 2 cents and become one, clean and cold, and for that one night, Daniel let himself have it. In the morning, the fever had turned and Jay was gone before Lily woke, the blanket folded on the arm of the couch, the soup pot washed and drying, and a note on the counter in handwriting that was worse than a 4-year-old's that said only, "Text me if you need the daycare run again. No pressure." Jay Daniel kept the note. He told himself he kept it for the daycare number. He knew that was a lie while he was telling it. That was the high point, and Daniel should have known, because in his experience, the high point was just the place you stood to see how far there was to fall. The weeks after the fever night were the closest thing to easy that Daniel had let himself have in years. Jay did the daycare runs when the sitter could not. Jay learned which cup was Lily's cup, and that she would not eat anything green unless it was hidden, and that she fell asleep faster if you left the hall light on. Jay never once came down the hall without being asked. He showed up for shifts and bust glasses and learned the regulars and made Carol laugh, which almost nobody did, and the bond between Jay and Daniel settled into something so steady that Daniel caught himself, on a slow afternoon, not thinking about it at all, just living inside it like a man lives inside good weather, which was exactly when he found out what it was costing. He found out from Brian, who tended bar with him on the weekend shifts, a beta a few years older, with a kid of his own, and no patience for anything that wasted his time. Brian had been watching the Jay situation from the rail for weeks with the flat skepticism of a man who had seen a lot of alphas come through a lot of bars, and one slow Sunday, he set down the glass he was drying and said, "You know that kid quit his whole life for you." "Right. What?" "The alpha. Jay." Brian said the name like he was still deciding about it. "You know he dropped his friends. The loud one. The one who was here that night. The one who set the whole thing off. They had words. I heard about it from the Sunday guy who knows the loud one's roommate. Jay told them he was done with the bar crawl thing and the loud one called him whipped and worse. And Jay didn't fight him on it. Just stopped showing up. Hasn't seen any of them in weeks." Daniel set down his own glass. "That's his business." "Sure. Now the part that's yours." Brian leaned on the bar. He took a job. Hard one. Commercial diving. The cold water certification. The one where you weld under the hull in winter, and the washout rate is brutal. Kid never worked a day in his life, and he's doing the worst entry job on the water because it pays the fastest. You want to know why it pays the fastest? Daniel did not answer. "'Cause nobody sane wants it," Brian said. "He's doing it for the money. And I'll give you one guess whose rent he's been asking around about, real quiet, like he doesn't want it getting back to you. Because the Sunday guy's cousin is your landlord's nephew, and this town is the size of a coat closet." The floor of Daniel's stomach dropped out. He went home that night, and he did not sleep. And the thing keeping him awake was not the bond. It was a memory. 4 years old now, and still sharp as the day it happened. Lily's other father before he left, in the good months, the early months, doing exactly this. Taking the extra shifts, covering the bills before Daniel could see them. Building the whole machine of provision around Daniel, quietly, lovingly, like a man laying track. And Daniel back then had thought it was love, had let himself lean on it, had let himself believe that for once someone was going to carry part of the weight. And then the day came when the weight got real, when it stopped being romantic and started being a life. And the man had looked at the 2 pink lines and at the track he had laid, and decided he did not want to be a train after all, and he had walked off it and left Daniel standing on rails that went nowhere. That was the wound, not being left, being built around and then left. Being turned into a thing that someone takes care of right up until taking care of you stops being a feeling and starts being a job, and then watching them discover they never signed up for a job. And here was a 22-year-old boy laying the exact same track, dropping his friends, taking the brutal job, asking about the rent, building the machine, And the machine was beautiful. The machine was everything Daniel had once wanted. And Daniel knew exactly how the machine ended, because he had stood on the rails of one before, with an infant in his arms. He could not do it again. He would not do it again. Not to himself, and not God, not to Lily, who had started saving Jay a crayon, who had started asking when the daycare boy was coming, who was 4, and did not yet know that people who built things around you could unbuild them and go. So Daniel did the thing he was good at, the only thing he had ever been good at when it came to this. He took the wall he had built brick by brick over 4 years, and he put it back up between himself and the one person who had ever gotten over it, and he did it fast. Before the part of him that was already in love could vote, he waited until Lily was at daycare. He asked Jay to come by, and Jay came fast, like always, and Daniel met him at the door and did not let him in. And Jay's face, when he understood he was not being let in, was a thing Daniel made himself look at, because he owed the boy that much, to look at what he was doing. "I know about the job," Daniel said, "and the friends, and the rent. Brian told me. The whole town told me, apparently." "Okay," Jay said carefully. Are you mad?" "I wasn't going to actually pay the rent without asking. I was just trying to find out what the number was so I'd know how much I needed to." "That's the problem." "What's the problem?" "The number." Daniel's voice was level, and it cost him everything to keep it level. "You found out my number. You quit your friends and you took a job that's going to put you in cold water under a hull all winter, and you found out my number? And you're 22, Jay. You're 22 years old. You hadn't started your life yet, and you threw the whole thing in a fire for a man you kissed on a dare, and you're calling it taking care of me. And I need you to hear what I'm about to say." He made himself say it. "I don't want to be taken care of. I want to be wanted. Those are not the same thing. And the second I let someone confuse them, I end up exactly where I started, holding everything by myself with a kid on my hip. Except worse, because that time I'll have let her get attached first." "I'm not him," Jay said. He had gone white. He did not know who him was, not the details, but he knew there was a him. He could hear it. "Whoever you're talking about, whatever happened to you, I don't know, but I'm not. I would never." "You don't know that. You're 22. You don't know what you'd never. I'm 26, and I've got a kid, and a wall, and 4 years of figuring out exactly what people do when the feeling wears off and the work is still there. And the answer is they leave, Jay. They leave. And the only ones who get hurt are the ones who let themselves believe the work was the same as the wanting." Daniel's hand was on the door. "I can't undo the bond. Neither of us can. But the bond doesn't mean you owe me your whole life, and it doesn't mean I have to let you spend it. Go get your friends back. Go be 22. Feel the bond from across town like a normal bonded person, and let me raise my kid in peace." "You don't mean that." "I mean every word of it." "Then why are you crying?" Jay said, very quietly. And Daniel realized he was, and he shut the door, because there was nothing else to do with his face, and he stood on his side of it with his back against the wood, and listened to the boy not leave for a long time, just stand there on the other side, 2 inches of door between them, the bond screaming in both of their chests, until finally, Jay's footsteps went down the stairs. The days after were bad in a way Daniel had not braced for, because he had braced for grief, and this was not grief. Grief he knew. This was the bond in distress, a physical thing, a low, constant wrongness like a sound he could not turn off, worse at night, worst in the small hours when the fever nights used to be. And he understood now in his body what the books only said in words, that prolonged separation causes distress, that the 2 nervous systems that had handshaken in a bar did not want to be in different rooms, let alone different parts of a city. He kept it from Lily. That was the one mercy he could manage. In front of her he was fine. He was steady. He made the breakfast and hid the green things and left the hall light on. And only after she was asleep did he let himself feel how much it hurt. And even then he kept it quiet, because the walls were thin. She asked about Jay on the 3rd day. "Is the daycare boy coming?" "Not today, Bug. Tomorrow." "I don't think so. She thought about this with the seriousness she gave to everything. "Did he go where my other dad went?" she asked, and Daniel had to sit down, because she had never asked about her other father, in those words, had never seemed to register the shape of his absence. And apparently she had. She had registered all of it, 4 years old and keeping her own quiet ledger of who stayed and who went, and Daniel pulled her into his lap and said, "No, he did not go where your other dad went. He's just busy," and hated himself, because it was a lie, and because the truth was Daniel had sent him. Jay, across the city, was not handling it better. He was handling it worse because he was 22 and had never been heartbroken and did not have the calluses for it, and because the bond distress sat on top of the heartbreak and made it physical, and because he did not understand what he had done wrong. He had done everything right. That was the part that made him a little crazy in those first days. He had quit the drinking and the dumb dares. He had taken a real job, the hardest one he could find, because hard meant fast, and fast meant he could finally be of use. He had stopped asking Daniel for anything and started trying to give. He had, by every measure he had ever been taught about what a man was supposed to do, become a man, and the second he did it, the door had closed in his face. He went to Mason, because he did not have anyone else left, which was its own answer to a question he had not wanted to ask. Mason let him in and got him a beer and listened to the whole thing with his feet up on the coffee table, and at the end of it Mason said, "So, let me get this straight. You met a guy because I bet you $40 to kiss him, you accidentally married him with your mouth, and now you've thrown away your entire life, including, I want to note, me, to go freeze to death under a boat for a single dad who just dumped you through a door." Mason took a drink. "And you want to know what you did wrong?" "Yeah. You really don't see it. If I saw it, I wouldn't be sitting in your disgusting apartment, would I?" Mason was quiet for a second, and when he spoke again, the showman was gone out of him, and what was left was just a guy who had known Jay since they were boys. "You turned him into homework," Mason said. "That's what you did. You found a person, and instead of, I don't know, being a person with him, you turned him into a project you could grind at. The job, the rent, the whole martyr thing. You didn't ask him what he wanted. You decided what a good guy does, and you did all of it at him." Mason shrugged. "I don't know the guy. But if some kid I'd known for a month quit his whole life and started freezing under boats to pay my rent without asking, I'd be scared too. That's not love, man. That's a down payment. People can feel when they're being bought, even when the guy buying them thinks he's being nice." Jay sat with that. "Also," Mason said, "and I say this with love, you did kind of accidentally marry him with your mouth because of a bet I made. So, a lot of this is technically my fault. And I've decided to stop feeling bad about it and start feeling responsible, which is a new thing for me, so don't make it weird." "You're an idiot," Jay said. His voice was not working right. "Yeah, but I'm a free idiot who didn't take a death job under a boat, so between us I'm having a better week." Mason put his feet down. "Go fix it." Not with another grand gesture. He's clearly drowning in grand gestures. Go figure out what he actually needs, which I'm guessing, based on everything you just told me, is for one single person in his life to want him without immediately handing him a bill. It took Jay days to understand what Mason meant. Days of riding the bond distress and turning it over. Days of the cold water job that he did not quit. Because quitting it now to prove a point would just be one more gesture aimed at Daniel, and he was done aiming things at Daniel. He kept the job because he found, to his surprise, that he was good at it, that he liked the cold and the focus and the men on the crew who did not care who his friends were, and that was the first thing he had ever chosen that was just his. And the having of one thing that was just his was, he started to understand, maybe the whole point. He did not show up at Daniel's door with soup. He had learned that much. What he did days later was come to the bar on a slow night when he knew Daniel was working, and he sat at the rail like any customer, far down the bar, and he ordered one drink, and he did not bus a single glass. He let the staff do their jobs. He let Daniel work. He just sat there, present, asking for nothing, like Daniel had once told him to be on the very first night. and when the bond between them flared at the nearness of each other, he let it flare and did not try to fix it. And after an hour, Daniel walked down the bar and stood in front of him with the towel over his shoulder and a face like a man bracing for another gesture. "I'm not here to pay your rent," Jay said before Daniel could speak. "I'm not going to." "I called the landlord and told him to forget I ever asked. It's your rent. You've been paying it. You're good at it." He turned his glass on the bar. "I kept the diving job, but not for you. I kept it because I'm good at it and I like it and it's mine, and I needed one thing that was mine before I had any business offering to share a life with anybody. I dropped my friends because I wanted to, except Mason, who I kept because somebody has to drive me to the docks. And I came here tonight to tell you one thing and then leave, and you can throw me out the second I've said it." "Say it then," Daniel said. Jay looked at him, and for once, the easy, fluent charm did not come, and the careless boy was nowhere in him, and what was left was just a young man who had finally figured out the one true thing under all the gestures. "I made you into a job," Jay said. "I know what I did now. You'd already had somebody do that to you. I could tell there was a somebody, and I came along and did the exact same thing in a nicer jacket. I built a whole machine around you so I wouldn't have to do the scarier thing, which is just stand here with nothing in my hands and say, 'I want you.' Not take care of you, want you. There's a difference, and you tried to tell me, and I was too busy being a hero to hear it." His voice cracked on the next part, and he let it. "I don't want to provide for you. I mean, I do, eventually, like two people do for each other. But that's not the thing. The thing is, I want to be a person you chose, not a service you got stuck with. And I can't make you choose me." I finally get that. The bond doesn't make you choose me, and the soup doesn't, and the rent doesn't, so I'm not going to do any of it anymore. I'm just going to want you, out loud, one time, and then I'm going to go home, and the wanting is yours to do whatever you want with. The bar was quiet. Carol had stopped pretending to do anything at all. "That's it," Jay said. "I don't have a better answer than that." It was almost the same thing he had said on the first night, when Daniel had asked him what he wanted. They both heard it. The words were nearly the same, but the boy saying them was not, and that was what Daniel had been waiting to see without believing it would come. The old Jay would have built the machine. This one was offering to take it apart because Daniel asked him to. Daniel did not say anything for a long moment. Then he reached across the bar and took the glass out of Jay's hand and set it aside, and he leaned over the rail, and he kissed him. It was nothing like the first time. The first time had been a dare, fast and stolen, over before either of them understood it. This time, Daniel took his time. This time, it was his choice. His hand on the side of Jay's face, him setting the pace, slow and sure. And their scents came up and met over the bar and made the one scent they always made. Except now it was not an accident. Neither of them had agreed to. Now they were choosing it. When Daniel pulled back, Jay's eyes were wet, and his hands were flat on the bar where Daniel could see them, like they had been that first night across the table. The same gesture Daniel had once been so tired of, except now Daniel understood. It was not submission. It was the boy showing him every time, "Look, no machine, just me, hands empty, here. We're doing this backward," Daniel said. "You understand that. We've got the bond and we don't have anything else. People date and then they bond. We bonded and now we have to go back and do the rest of it out of order. The dinners, the figuring out if we even like each other. All of it, after the fact, the hard way." "I'd like to take you to dinner," Jay said. "I'd like to find out if we like each other. I'm pretty sure I already know my answer, but I'd like to do it right. You don't come down the hall yet, with Lily. That's still slow. That stays slow, no matter how fast this is." "That stays as slow as you want it to stay," Jay said. "Forever, if that's how long it takes. She's yours." "I'm not in a hurry to be anything to her until you and I are sure, and maybe not even then for a while. And that's fine. I've got a job under a boat and a friend who drives me to it. I can be patient." Daniel looked at him a moment longer. Then he picked the towel off his shoulder and threw it at Jay's face, which was the most affectionate thing Carol had ever seen him do to a living person, and said, "Drinks on the house. We close at 2. If you're still here at 2, I'll let you walk me home. You stay on the sidewalk. You don't come up." "I'll be here at 2, Jay said. He was there at 2. The dating, when they finally did it in the right order, was its own slow good thing, and it had nothing to do with the bond and everything to do with the two people on either end of it. They found out they did like each other, which is not a thing the bond can decide for you, no matter what the fated mate stories say. They found out Jay was funny in a dry way Daniel had not seen coming, and that Daniel was funnier, much funnier, in a way that took Jay weeks to earn his way into. They found out they fought well, cleanly, without going for the throat, because Daniel had no patience for the long sulk, and Jay, to his own surprise, had stopped needing to win. They found out, slowly, across many small permissions, that the thing the bond had presumed about them was turning out to be true. Not because the bond made it true, but because they were doing the work to make it so, on purpose, in the right order. Late. Mason did drive Jay to the docks, all winter, and grumbled about it, and came to low tide on the weekends now, and the loud, careless boy who had thrown $40 on a sticky table got a little less loud and a little less careless, month by month, because his best friend was growing up and he decided, grudgingly, to grow up too, rather than lose him. He and Daniel circled each other warily for a long time. The first time Mason made Daniel actually laugh, Jay watched it happen from across the bar with an expression like a man watching two halves of his life decide to get along, and he had to go to the back for a minute. It was most of a year before Jay came down the hall. Daniel set the timeline, and Daniel held it, and Jay never once pushed, and the not pushing was what finally moved it. The patience the boy turned out to have once the thing he wanted was real. Lily got to know Jay slowly, out in the open, at the bar and the park and the front step. It happened in small things. Jay learned the order the bedtime book had to go in, that you could not skip the page with the moon, or she would make you start over. And he read it in the same flat, patient voice every time and never once acted like he had somewhere better to be. He learned to cut her apple so the skin came off in one piece because she liked to hold it up like a prize. When it rained, he was the one who remembered the yellow coat. When she fell off the low wall outside the bar and split her lip, it was Jay who was closest, and he did not panic, and he did not make it a big thing. He just sat down on the wet ground with her and pressed a clean bar towel to it and talked to her in that same flat voice until she stopped crying. Daniel watched from the door. The boy had stopped keeping track of whether any of this was owed to him. He just did it. He did it like they were his. The daycare boy became just Jay, and then, one day, by her own decision, announced with the total authority of a 5-year-old, he became my Jay. And Daniel did not correct her, because by then it was true. It was most of a year on from a dare in a bar, a cold, bright afternoon near the water, and Daniel was behind the rail at low tide on a slow shift when Jay came in off the docks, still smelling of cold rope and the salt of the Sound. Lily was on his shoulders. He had carried her the whole way from the park, and she was holding his hair and talking the entire time. Carol looked up from the register and rolled her eyes, which, from Carol, was love. The little brick room filled with the scent of the three of them together. And Daniel, who had spent his whole life keeping his scent so small that people took him for a beta who had hidden it so nobody could ever use it against him, stood in the middle of his own bar and let it out. All of it, the cold water and the burnt orange, and the deeper note under both of them, the wet slate he had kept down for as long as he could remember. Out in the open, on purpose, because he was happy, and he did not want to take it back. The end. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the story, tell me your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you.